Superintendent's report, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Ross.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school board, to our community and staff. At this time, I want to thank Dr. Mike Lofton and the Spring Hill Stallion staff for hosting us tonight. Thank you for getting us set up. We're really excited to be here at Spring Hill High School. Also, I'd like to welcome, we have some new administrators here with us, and I'd like to introduce them to the board. At this time, from Pickens County, formerly Pickens High School, our new Director of Secondary Education, Dr. Corey Williman, is here. If you may stand. Not here with us, but joining us will be our Director of Career and Technical Education, Mr. David Prigge. So we're excited about having him. And also our new Director of Communication coming to us, formerly General Counsel for the Department of Transportation, Ms. Amanda Taylor. If you may stand to be recognized. And our new Chief of Academics and Administration didn't have to travel too far for her, so we're excited to have Ms. Anna Miller. Thank you. And because Ms. Miller is formerly of Chapin Middle School as the principal, we now welcome Ms. Stephanie Huckabee as interim principal at Chapin Middle School. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to have this leadership team here with us. As we said on July the 12th, I talked about my vision and what we would do in terms of this notion of we are District 5. And I outlined to the board that it's alignment of vision, mission, and outcomes. And that we know that we've aligned our vision, our mission, and our outcomes when the feedback said so, when our parents, when our children have said that the vision that we've set forth is what has actually been accomplished. We asked 3 questions to get to this. The first question is why? Why are we here? Why do we work in District 5? Second question is how? How do we accomplish the vision? And the third question is what? What do we actually produce? And it's the community's feedback that lets us know that that's working. So I wanted to make sure that we asked that question, why? We asked 2,600 employees of School District 5, why do you work in our district? And with a united voice, this was their response. And in that is our vision. And so it was not clear. When 2,600 people speak at once, sometimes it's very unclear. And so what we did is we weighted everybody's response. And when you weight their response, you will see that the smaller words are the things that weren't said as often, but the larger words are things that were said over and over again. And as you get to a weight of 0.78, you start seeing the language of a vision. With a weight of 0.78, the faculty and staff said they're here to create a future. The textbook definition of a vision is an image of the future. And so we asked, what future are you here to create? And with a united voice at a weight of 0.79, they believe that this image of a future involves our schools and community. At 0.83, they believe that we should love and grow. And 1.0, meaning that this was coded in every response from every respondent from our faculty and staff, they believed it was about our students. This is not my vision. This is our vision. This is our direction. Our community, our faculty, and our staff have spoken. And so with a united voice, we know our why. Our why is that we are here because we love and we grow our students. And each and every day we take that vision to heart. And now it's up to us as leaders to create a mission that allows us to measure and to align our work so that every child can say, in School District 5 is a place where I'm loved and a place where I can grow. So I want to thank all of those who responded to this survey, who gave their voice to giving our vision. I asked on that meeting this question of how are the children? And it's under that notion, are they being loved? Are they growing? That we will continue to ask and continue to measure that to make sure that we can say all the children are well. On the first days of school, our leadership team, I saw them in a lot of schools, and we were looking at all of these smiling faces as they returned, excited to return to school. I was excited to visit them across our district. But as we talk about that notion of how are the children, are all the children well, we cannot report that all the children are well. And so we will continue the work that we have to do until we can have that answer. What is our challenge now, one of our greatest threats, is providing a safe in-person learning environment for all. To do this, we look for guidance, we look for help. The question is, Dr. Ross, who do you listen to, or who are we guided by when it comes to providing a safe in-person learning environment? And we really lean on the help of our local officials, the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, DHEC. We also had a community forum where we invited Dr. Jane Kelly, Assistant State Epidemiologist, to come and help us as we walk through some of our mitigations, help us to overcome some of the myths and some of the information that was out there. In that community forum, and we actually reached our capacity over that, so we do have it online for those to view. We apologize to those who couldn't get in, because we will be looking at ways to increase the number of participants for our next community forum. But in that, we received tons of information on what we can do in order to protect our children. And so from that, we were able to update our guidance to make sure that we were using our tools to mitigate. What are the tools that we have? Well, one thing we've learned since 2019, since this horrible virus has started, was that it does one thing and one thing only. It has one objective, and that objective has not changed. Its objective is to spread. If it spreads, it lives. If it cannot spread, it dies. So therefore, we must have one objective, and that's to stop it from spreading. Now, we have tools, and I put out a video to illustrate to our community how we can stop this virus from spreading. One student said to me, Dr. Ross, I don't care what messages you put out. If it's in writing, I'm not going to read it. And she said, if you could put some videos out, then that would help me. So for this one particular student, this is for you. We do have tools. We have tools of vaccinations. We have tools of disinfecting the surfaces. We have tools of cleaning our hands and making sure that our hands are clean. We have tools of ventilation to replace the air. We have screening tools that we can use. We have tools of physical distancing that, in most cases, we can use. We have the tools of masks that we can use. But I think the most important tool, the tool that I think we should never forget, is we have the tool of love. And we as a community may disagree on a lot of things. You may disagree on some of these tools. But how we work together should be in a spirit of love, should be in a spirit that we're all one community. I may not agree with my brother. I may not agree with my sister, but I love them, and I treat them as such. And so we want to make sure that we use all these tools so that we're professional and that we're keeping our children safe. No one tool stops the spread by themselves, but collectively, we have a powerful screen to stop the virus from its number one objective, which is to spread. Now, we recognize that sometimes we won't be able to stop it. We won't be able to employ all these tools. And if we can't, then our system calls us to go to red. The question was, Dr. Ross, at what point do you send a school to red? We will go to red if we cannot provide what's called ISS, not in-school suspension, but instruction, safety, and supervision. So we're trying to use all of these tools to ensure that we keep our students in school. I'd rather than be in school with masks than at home without them. And so what happens in the red zone, Dr. Ross? Well, there's 4 things that can happen, and forgive the small type here. But the first one is virtual learning. That's our 5, our flexible, innovative virtual education program. If you recall last year, members of the board, that we had over 5,000 students in that. Under Proviso 1.103, we are limited to a 5% threshold, 5% of our 135th day ADM, average daily membership. As a result, currently, we're at about 4.24% at that threshold. We must report tomorrow to the State Department where our ADM is to ensure that we're not exceeding that 5% threshold. We have e-learning. These are for emergencies where there is weather, inclement weather. You know, we have hurricane season coming up, or we cannot go to the school. We're allowed 5 days of this e-learning. There was a lot of talk about dual modality, and why are we not allowing dual modality? Dual modality is when a teacher is teaching face-to-face, but also teaching online. Under a joint resolution, S704, Section 3, Part A, dual modality is prohibited unless you have extreme or unavoidable circumstances. As a result, this practice is prohibited. And I think a lot with students on quarantine, the question is, why can't that teacher teach the children that are face-to-face and online? And so that brings us to the last part, which is distance learning. Currently, we have our students working, if they're in grades K through 2, they're on the Seesaw platform. If they're in grades 3 through 12, they move to the Google Classroom platform. We have launched with the help of Dr. Harris's team a new dashboard that we invite the community to look at. Is updated every day by 9 a.m. And on that dashboard, you could see our levels of mitigation. You can also see the colors, but you can see how many students are positive, how many students are isolated, how many students are in quarantine, and the percentage of those students in staff by school. You can see that in some of our schools, the levels of mitigation, the tools, we see them working. And we have that evidence to support schools in which we are not seeing the spread be contained. However, we do recognize it is unavoidable that students will be in quarantine. And this is not something that we enjoy when students are out. And so starting September 1st, with the help of Ms. Miller and Ms. McCaskill's team, we have created a COVID student support team. This is to help our students when after school with the instruction when they are during quarantine. I'm going to ask at this time Chief of Academics and Administration, Ms. Miller, to come forward and just give us a little update on the COVID student support services.
Thank you, Dr. Ross, Madam Chair, board members. I'm happy tonight to give you a basic overview of what we have created as our COVID student support teams. Each school will create their COVID student support team. It will be based of up to 5 members. One of those will be a clerical support member, and then 4 certified teachers. This group will act as a liaison between the student and the classroom teachers or the school. This team member does not replace the classroom teacher as the primary instructor, but it is an opportunity for them to receive extra help, ask questions, or for that person to help connect them as needed. It is an optional service, so anytime a student goes into quarantine or isolation, the family will be notified and the student will be notified of the opportunity for this. They will be told the specific team member who will be responsible for that child, and then they will be invited to join a COVID Google Classroom, a COVID support team Google Classroom, where there will be a live Google Meet link for 1 hour on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. That'll be a time for students to ask questions, for them to get any support, and also, because our attendance guidelines are based on the students completing the work by the assigned date, this COVID support team member will also check in with the student and the teacher to ensure that assignments are being completed, and if they are not, to connect with that student and that family and offer any support there and encouragement, and to re-engage that student in the learning. The time that this service would be available would be during that quarantine and isolation period. So they would be allowed to join that classroom from the beginning of that quarantine and isolation, and then they would be removed from that classroom at the end of that quarantine and isolation. So it is specific to the COVID quarantine and isolation time period. We also have expectations that we'll be sharing with the families as well for the students during their time in this, and that is to do their assignments, to go to Google Classroom or Seesaw, to communicate with their teachers, and to seek that help as needed. And we're also asking our parents to oversee that as well, to make sure that the student does know that this is available and to help them do that as it is needed. That is a basic overview. I'm happy to take any questions if you choose, Dr. Ross.
Let me check. Board members, any questions for Ms. Miller? Go ahead. Ms. Hines.
I have a question about how does the classroom work for a student? So if I'm a student and I log in on a Monday, are there other students in the classroom? Are they at my school? Are they at other schools? Is it grade specific? Does that make sense?
Great question. So we considered all of that, and at this time, you would log on to the classroom. There would be other students who may or may not be on there. During that hour, a student can log in for a few minutes, ask their question, and log back off, or make that contact and ask for any help and log back off, or they're welcome to remain. The teacher will remain for the entire hour so that students can pop in and out as they need to do that. Right now, it is designed for each school. So if your child is at school A, then the people in that classroom would be from school A.
And it would be all subjects, not just an English hour or when you log in, your teacher is going to help you with English or math or social studies or science.
That's correct. We
Okay.
found great success last year with our 5 program with a class that was entitled Academic Enrichment. And so, for example, one of the teachers from Chapin Middle School led a class. She is a math teacher. She was able to answer any math questions that came her way and provide that support. But she was also able to help if an English, science, or social studies question came up. So that'll be the same case with this, if you will. The certification of the teacher may be one thing. If the teacher can answer the question, great, or provide that help, great. If not, that's when that teacher really becomes that liaison with the classroom teacher. Hey, this student needs help with X. Please make sure that you get in touch with them. But the teacher, what we want to make sure that everyone understands is this COVID student support team is an additional layer of support. It does not replace any of our other services that are already established. So it does not replace homebound. It does not replace our contingency plans for special education or any of our other established services. This is another layer. And it'll also provide us a way to make sure that we aren't losing any students.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that sounds great. I know parents will appreciate that. Students will too.
Well, Madam Chair, I think there's one more powerful tool that I just want to end with, and I want to thank Anna Miller and Tina McCaskill and their team for developing this, and I think that's, I'll end with the power of the heart. There's a poem by Dr. Dorothy Nolte that I think is important, and it says, "Children learn what they live. If they live criticism, hostility, and fear, they learn to condemn, fight, and be apprehensive. If they love tolerance, fairness, and acceptance, they learn to be patient, they learn justice, they learn love. We use our tools. Kids will live security, and they will learn faith." And I just believe that we as a community have that obligation to make sure that we're providing as much security during these times so the children will have faith in us. So with that, Madam Chair, member of the school board, community, that concludes the superintendent's report, and I stand for any questions.
At this time, any questions?
I
for
do
Ms.
have one. I was looking, and maybe this is the wrong place in the program to ask this, but since we had just gone over something similar to this, I noticed in here that in the ESSER funds, the ESSER 3 funds, that we have a bunch of money in here for mental health services and support. Okay, how do we, and it's kind of maybe too facile for you guys, but how do when you have a situation where you have people quarantined and they're asking for help there, how do we ascertain whether they need more help than just with their schoolwork? I mean, how do you get that? How do you get that help if you're just online and talking and so forth?
Dr. Harris, you'd like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Lovelace. One of the, I think, essential benefits that we have here at School District 5 are our support persons such as our school social workers who are in direct contact with students and families, as well as our schools. And to give you a classic example of that, even with 5, there is a social worker specifically assigned for those students who are in 5 throughout the course of the year. So that is one of the ways, I think, one of the strongest ways that we have available to us, that we do have people who are in contact with students who are not in school and are able to follow up with those families, should that be the case in their own quarantine.
So this program we're talking about right now is not 5. That's just for quarantine.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess my point is that although it may be seen to be temporary, but a child could go downhill pretty quick and not be getting the support and not understand, why they're not in class and not fitting in. I was just wondering, with this seems to be like tutoring to me, right? Is that what this is aimed at?
So I would say, and Ms. Miller can help me out, we also have staff that'll be working on this. So while we talked about a teacher, you have a teacher for the academic, we're also using ESSER monies to provide staff members. Staff members are a direct point of contact with the parent. Mm-hmm. So just like Dr. Harris said, we have in our schools these social workers, the school counselors. We have those available. That staff person not only connects you with that teacher, but also connects you with any of the support staff we have in there, from the coach that needs to get with you, to the nurse, to the social, emotional, through our crisis intervention teams. So having that staff person in place with the parent, I think, connects the child to the services. I hate to put words in anybody's mouth, but where I missed.
Well, you did it perfectly.
Oh.
And that's exactly right. I'm glad you asked that. I actually left that piece out. We do have a piece in there that says that that liaison can also connect that student or that family with other services that are already established. So while it doesn't take the place of that service, they can connect them with other services. So for example, our student assistant team, our triage teams, our counselors, our mental health coordinators and everything. And the great news about it, using our own staff to do this, is they're already trained to recognize those signs and symptoms in our students. And so they know what to do and who to contact, and that would be that direct liaison who would do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any other questions for Ms. Hines?
I have a couple, but I know Ms. Huddle has one too, so we
Oh,
can
I'm sorry.
tag team it if you want. But this one is going to be regarding the dashboard. So I saw that the new dashboard launched today, and a couple of things that I noticed that I just wonder if we're still kind of working out the glitches. I know that when I try to pull it up on my phone, it's not necessarily phone-friendly. Is that something that can be, is it still in the works, or is there a way that we can make that a little bit more accessible for folks that utilize their phones instead of a computer at their home? And is there a way for us to be able to export the data from the dashboard so that we can, I know a lot of people like to keep track of the numbers. Is that?
So, yeah, we will have, and Dr. Harris, correct me where I'm wrong, but we will have Director Holden at our next board meeting kind of go over all of the capabilities of this. He is the one and his team that have coded this. I think in all ways we can make it phone friendly, even if we have to put up another version of it. This is really a tool that if you, we want our school leaders and our school community to see how their schools fit in that color scheme. So right now, everything is orange, but as the year goes on, you'll see different colors pop up. Mm-hmm. The biggest news for me as I look at it is I can go right down and see where the transmission is very low, and that information is available to me, and where it's very high. But I like the point that you make about accessibility and downloading. I think I just want to ensure that Director Holden is, I don't want to promise something until he can show me he can deliver, but we'll definitely take that back.
Okay, and then I have another question regarding, so I know in regards to dual modality, our teachers can't, based under the provisos, teach both virtually and in person. So my question is, what constitutes an extreme and unavoidable circumstance, especially when we're talking about having students that are quarantined and may have to take home a packet and do self-study? And I'm appreciative of the 3 hours that you have with the COVID student support services, but if a student is struggling and they only have 3 hours of opportunity to ask a question, I just want to address the concerns that parents may have about, there's a lot of frustration regarding that language of extreme and unavoidable circumstance. So what is that, and how, do we address that with parents that are concerned about students having to do work at home while they're quarantined without live instruction?
Dr. Turner, are you able to speak to the provisions of the dual modality in extreme cases?
We've had the opportunity to engage with at the Department of Education because we've asked the same question. The purpose of the bill is to protect from use of that, but there is that language that says extreme circumstances. So we are currently working with the Department of Education for clarification on that. And as this unfolds, it will likely be that as we learn more information, we'll be able to bring that information forward to determine what would clear us from that prohibition from assigning teachers that. So it's still a work in progress.
I think, too, one thing, and this is outside of Dr. Turner's purview, but we do recognize having that, seeing what the teacher is seeing is important. And we're in the, I want to say the infancy, but we are developing, just for the board's knowledge, ways that we can actually tape what's going on in that classroom so that even though you're missing it, you still have access to it. So we're working on that. I don't have the timeline or delivery on that, but the first part is on September 1st, those teams will be up. And now that you have that team up in place, now you have someone that can actually go and work with that teacher and coordinate back and forth. So it's the 3 hours a week, but it's also the surrounding team around you that can provide the information, get the notes, get the updates there. I always say to our team, the power's in the pivot. We're going to put version 1 out there. Version 1.0 will not be perfect, but 3.0 will be, or much better. So September 1st, version 1.0 will come out. We will learn, we will pivot, and make sure that subsequent versions are much better. This feedback helps us understand what parents are seeing. I got the notice today, my children are quarantined. So we're going to see firsthand how much we need these COVID student support teams.
Ms. Huddle.
Yes, ma'am. I had a couple of questions. I kind of have a quarantine part A and B and a second question after that. On the quarantine part A, what's going on with the rules? Are they changing? They're a little different than they were last year, and we're also seeing some differences between us and some other schools. And then part B of that question is, if an entire class is quarantined, will they get synchronous learning from their teacher versus the asynchronous?
Ms. Miller?
If I may, Ms. Huddle, before I answer yours, may I go back to Ms. Hines, just to remind that it is an additional 3 hours. It doesn't take over any services, nor does it take over what that regular classroom teacher does. So those classroom teachers have their planning periods, and they check in with students, they answer questions, they email. They'll do a Google Meet during their planning at times with students to provide extra instruction. They may be recording their lessons outside of the Google Meet that fits the dual modality, but they may be recording their lessons and posting some of them. So I just wanted to be sure that we were clear that it was more than just the 3 hours a week. That is an additional 3 hours a week above and beyond the support that they receive there. And Ms. Huddle, if you would please, your question was if the entire class is quarantined?
Would the teaching be synchronous versus the asynchronous?
So the opportunity for that would be there. That depends on if the teacher is quarantined and if the teacher feels well enough to teach. Assuming that the teacher does feel well enough to teach, yes, as long as it's all students in one location, or as long as if it's a small number of students, we can put those students in another location. If the teacher is there, but only a couple of students are there, we just need to be sure that we're providing the best instruction that we can provide without putting the teacher in the place of doing that dual modality.
Okay. And
working
then
the two
the other
classes.
question was how the quarantine rules have changed from last year and/or are continuing to change.
And are continuing to change. So as of this morning, or this afternoon, I received an email about 4:54 from contacted DHEC, and there are some new guidance coming from South Carolina Department on Health and Environmental Control that allows, if a positive case is in the classroom and the student has a mask on, and the positive case has a mask on, and they're within the 3 feet barrier, they do not have to quarantine. So masks have changed the quarantine scenario. That came in today. So we have not met as a team. So I want to be fair to our team, our nurses, and our schools. Not even the principals are aware of this, as I'm aware, because we just got this information. So we are developing what that means for those who are in quarantine. But again, released today, and I'm still reading over it, the new guidance from CDC, which is adopted by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. If the positive case has a mask and the student has a mask and they're within 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, doesn't matter, they are not considered a close contact and will not have to quarantine. This information, again, I was reading over as I came in, and we need to message this with our nurses and our principals before we look at exactly how this rolls out. But this will have implications on who will quarantine and who will not.
Ms. Hammond,
Yes,
follow up to that. I think last year, if a student was quarantined and they got a negative test, they were allowed to come back sooner. Is that the case this year or not?
Anyone can speak to that?
That was a practice, but I will say to you, Ms. Huddle, that we are certainly, as Dr. Ross has outlined, looking forward to, as we move forward, making certain that we receive those guidelines that have just come out today and implement that as soon as possible so that we can all be on one accord as to how that's going to roll out for the better part of this year.
And then I had my second question. Can I ask?
You certainly can.
Chapin High School was in the news recently, and I thought you might just want to address what happened.
Yeah, so Chapin High School was in the news. They had an assembly, and we have guidance under our Code Orange. I want to be fair to all of our school and school leaders that allows you to have assemblies in Code Orange. However, you have to be 50% of the capacity of the room. That was outside of our Code Orange guidance. The principal and I have spoken, and he totally understands, and his goal is to keep a tradition together, and he understands the power of using our tools to stop the spread. But when we're in orange, any room like this, you would have to be at 50% capacity. When we move to yellow, it's 75% capacity. And at green, you can be at 100% capacity. So we're going to work, again, in messaging that, supporting our schools and principals to make sure that when we're in orange, we're under that orange guidelines.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Hines?
I'm going to follow up on a question that Ms. Huddle asked, and I'm not sure that I heard the answer. And if I missed it, I apologize. But my question is regarding how the rules have changed from last year to this year. Last year, if you were quarantined, you could take a test and return to the classroom after 7 days, or you could return to the classroom after 10 days. What I'm hearing right now is that the school policies are that you have to quarantine for 10 days regardless of a negative test or not. So the guidelines, as I understand them, and I know that local universities use these guidelines as well, if you take a test after day 5 or 6, you can return on day 7, I believe. Or if you don't, you can return after 10 days. So because we're talking about days of instruction, 2 days of instruction at least, what is the rule? And if it has changed, why has it changed? And where is it clarified? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback, and I have kids in school too, and I'm hearing a lot that the quarantine rules are ambiguous. So I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, or maybe I do. I want to know why we can't take a test after, to return after 7 days.
Well, I'll handle the first part, which is if I know of the quarantine rule. Under orange, you're supposed to be out, the guidance is 14 days. I gave permission to take that down to 10 days, just to give, like you said, we're missing a lot of time. So we're now at 10, which is under the guidance, but allowable under the recommendations. It is my understanding, and this is where I'm speaking, where I'm not reading, so if there's someone that could, to clarify, there is a time that, between the time you're identified, that you have to wait before you can give that test. We're going to check with Nurse Stanek and make sure that we can give you exactly what that is. That's handled at the nurse's station, so those specific questions, I want to make sure we hear from the nurse to answer you exactly correct.
Is she here tonight?
She's not here, but we're texting her
We're
the question.
okay.
Yeah.
And is Ms. Miller texting her or Dr. Harris?
Dr. Harris is.
Okay. Dr. Harris, if you get that, you can let us know, Ms. Hines, and we'll get that answered. Any other questions? Because next is our public participation, but I wanted to give them a chance to answer, Ms. Hines. Yeah.
And we can return back to this after.
Yeah, we could go back to, huh? Want to just move on and then come back? Does that suit everybody? And no, I'm talking about whether I was going to wait a few minutes for Ms. Hines to have her answer. I know where we
If
are.
it's okay with the board, I don't mind if we
Move
interrupt
forward.
the meeting, but
Okay.
I would like an answer.
Okay, 'cause we
because
have-
I've been getting that question a lot, so.
I think you need it.
Thank you.
And the public would like to hear it. What I was going to say, though, we do have a lot of public participation, so I'm going to move on with 9. But if that's okay with Ms. Hines, thank you.